This is Charles II of Spain, a king so sickly and disfigured that his own subjects whispered he was cursed. He struggled to eat, to speak, to even walk without pain. And yet, he was heir to one of the richest empires in the world. How could this happen? The answer lies in centuries of royal inbreeding marriages designed to keep power in the family, but which instead destroyed it. This is the story of the Habsburgs, Europe's most powerful dynasty, and how they bred themselves into extinction. For most of history, marriage wasn't about love. For royals, it was about power, securing alliances, preserving wealth, and keeping thrones in the family. The Habsburgs believed the purest way to preserve power was to keep their bloodline pure. But purity came at a cost. Throughout history, royal families have often prioritized maintaining political power, consolidating territories, and preserving the perceived purity of their bloodlines above all else. One of the most extreme manifestations of this practice was the repeated intermarriage among close relatives, particularly among European dynasties. While these unions were politically advantageous, they often resulted in unintended and tragic genetic consequences. The Habsburg dynasty, which rose to prominence in Europe from the 15th to the 18th century, is perhaps the most striking example of the perils of dynastic inbreeding. The family controlled vast swathes of Europe, including Spain, Austria, the Netherlands, and parts of Italy, and wielded enormous political influence through strategic marriages. Yet, over successive generations, the Habsburgs' obsession with marrying within their own lineage led to the concentration of harmful genetic traits, ultimately contributing to the decline of the dynasty and the demise of its Spanish line. This essay explores the phenomenon of royal inbreeding with a detailed focus on the Habsburgs. It examines the historical motivations behind intermarriage, the genetic consequences, the life and health of Charles II of Spain as a prime example, the broader implications for European politics, and comparisons with other royal families. Through this case study, the essay demonstrates how political strategy can clash with biological reality, with profound consequences for both rulers and the populations they govern. In medieval and early modern Europe, royal marriages were rarely personal or romantic. Instead, they were carefully orchestrated political arrangements aimed at consolidating power, securing alliances, and preserving territorial claims. Marrying within the family, often first cousins, uncle-niece, or even more closely related relatives, was seen as a way to keep the wealth, influence, and titles within the dynasty. This strategy was particularly prevalent in Catholic Europe, where the Church permitted consanguineous marriages under papal dispensations. European monarchies considered these unions essential for maintaining dynastic integrity. The risk of genetic complications was either unknown or secondary to the perceived benefits of political consolidation. The Habsburg dynasty exemplified the practice of dynastic inbreeding. By the 16th century, they had implemented a marriage strategy that emphasized internal family unions. The Spanish Habsburgs, in particular, frequently married first cousins or uncle-niece pairs. Over the centuries, more than 80% of marriages in the Spanish Habsburg line involved close relatives. Philip II of Spain, who reigned from 1556 to 1598, married his niece Anna of Austria. Their union, like many in the dynasty, was politically motivated to preserve territorial claims and strengthen dynastic ties. Successive generations followed similar patterns, further concentrating shared genes within the family. The dynasty's repeated consanguineous marriages, while initially successful in consolidating power, gradually increased the risk of harmful genetic traits manifesting. Minor deformities or illnesses in early generations were often overlooked or attributed to fate, but the cumulative effect over centuries would have devastating consequences. Inbreeding increases the likelihood that offspring will inherit identical copies of harmful recessive genes from both parents. In a genetically diverse population, such genes might remain dormant, never causing observable health problems. However, when close relatives reproduce, the probability of these recessive traits being expressed rises dramatically. For instance, children born to first cousins have approximately a 6% chance of inheriting identical harmful genes, while uncle-niece unions raise this risk to roughly 12%. Over multiple generations of intermarriage, these probabilities compound, leading to an accumulation of deleterious traits in the lineage. One of the most visible and famous consequences of Habsburg inbreeding was the mandibular prognathism, commonly known as the Habsburg jaw. This condition is characterized by a pronounced lower jaw and an extended protrusion of the mouth, often accompanied by misaligned teeth. The Habsburg jaw was present in several members of the dynasty and became more pronounced over successive generations, particularly in the Spanish branch. In Charles II of Spain, the condition reached its extreme form. His jaw was so pronounced that it severely impaired his ability to chew and speak, symbolizing the biological cost of the dynasty's obsession with consanguinity. In addition to the Habsburg jaw, repeated inbreeding led to other health complications, including infertility. Several members of the Spanish Habsburg line, including Charles II, were unable to produce heirs, creating political instability. Neurological and developmental issues, delayed growth, cognitive impairments, and behavioral difficulties were reported. Physical frailty, weak immune systems, chronic illness, and vulnerability to infections were common. These genetic consequences not only affected individuals but also had profound implications for the stability and succession of the dynasty. Charles II, born in 1661 to Philip IV of Spain and Mariana of Austria, was a direct product of generations of inbreeding. His parents were uncle and niece, both descended from the same Habsburg lineage. From infancy, Charles displayed numerous health problems, including developmental delays, weakness, and frequent illness. Contemporary accounts describe Charles as small, frail, and slow to reach developmental milestones. He did not walk until the age of 8 and could barely speak intelligibly as a child. His health issues made him the subject of intense scrutiny at court, and some contemporaries believed he was cursed, dubbing him El Hechizado, the Bewitched. Charles II's condition deteriorated throughout his life. He exhibited a range of physical deformities, including the extreme Habsburg jaw, dental problems, and poor muscle development. He also suffered from digestive issues, neurological impairments, and recurrent infections. His mental faculties were similarly affected. While he was reportedly intelligent and perceptive in certain respects, his physical limitations and developmental delays significantly hindered his ability to rule effectively. The Spanish court attempted a variety of remedies, including the use of physicians, mystics, and exorcists, reflecting the era's limited understanding of genetics. Charles II was married twice, first to Marie-Louise of Orleans and later to Maria Anna of Neuburg. Both marriages failed to produce children. His infertility created a profound succession crisis. Without a direct heir, the Spanish crown was vulnerable to claims from foreign dynasties, which eventually triggered the War of Spanish Succession upon his death in 1700. Charles II's inability to produce an heir illustrates the far-reaching consequences of inbreeding, which extended beyond personal health to affect international politics and warfare. The health problems resulting from inbreeding directly contributed to the decline of the Spanish Habsburgs. The inability to produce healthy heirs weakened dynastic stability and left Spain politically vulnerable. By the late 17th century, the Spanish Empire was experiencing economic decline, military defeats, and social unrest, conditions exacerbated by the incapacitation of its monarch. The death of Charles II without an heir sparked the War of Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1714, a major European conflict involving France, Austria, Britain, and the Netherlands. Competing dynastic claims over the Spanish throne led to widespread warfare, political realignment, and significant loss of life. This war serves as a stark example of how dynastic inbreeding and its consequences can ripple outward, shaping the course of European history. The Habsburgs' experience highlights a key tension. Political strategy may conflict with biological realities. While marrying close relatives maintained territorial control in the short term, it introduced long-term vulnerabilities in health, fertility, and governance. This interplay between genetics and political power underscores the importance of considering biological consequences in dynastic planning. Earlier members of the Habsburg family, such as Philip II and Philip IV, also married close relatives. These unions produced offspring who were physically and mentally impaired to varying degrees. While the health effects were less extreme than in Charles II, these cases show a cumulative pattern. Repeated cousin and uncle-niece marriages gradually concentrated harmful genetic traits. Mariana of Austria, Charles II's mother, herself descended from multiple Habsburg unions. Her marriage to Philip IV as his niece continued the cycle of consanguinity. While she was relatively healthy, her offspring, most notably Charles II, suffered severely from the genetic consequences of such close relative marriage. The Russian Romanovs also engaged in close relative marriages, though not to the extent of the Habsburgs. Hemophilia, introduced through Queen Victoria's lineage, became a significant issue in the Russian imperial family. The fragile health of heirs contributed to political instability and ultimately played a role in the Russian Revolution. The Ptolemies in ancient Egypt. The Ptolemies, including Cleopatra VII, routinely married siblings. These unions were intended to preserve royal bloodlines but often resulted in congenital defects and reduced fertility, paralleling the Habsburg experience. Hawaiian and Incan royals. Polynesian and South American royal families, including Hawaiian and Incan rulers, also practiced sibling unions. These practices concentrated power but increased genetic risk, demonstrating that dynastic inbreeding was a global phenomenon with similar consequences across cultures. Recent studies have utilized modern genetic tools to estimate the inbreeding coefficient of Charles II at approximately 0.254, equivalent to that of a sibling pair. This extraordinarily high coefficient is consistent with his extreme health problems and infertility. Researchers have also examined the Habsburg jaw, noting that its severity in Charles II represents the cumulative effects of repeated consanguinity. These analyses provide a compelling link between historical records, portraits, and contemporary genetic understanding. The Habsburg dynasty's extensive inbreeding offers a powerful case study in the intersection of politics, genetics, and history. While dynastic marriages were intended to consolidate power, they ultimately undermined the health, fertility, and political stability of the family. Charles II of Spain exemplifies the tragic consequences of centuries of consanguinity, severe physical deformities, infertility, developmental delays, and the loss of a dynasty. The consequences extended beyond individual health, shaping European political history through the War of Spanish Succession and the decline of Spanish hegemony. Comparisons with other royal families reinforce the universal lesson. While dynastic strategies may secure short-term advantages, neglecting genetic diversity can have profound and far-reaching consequences. The story of the Habsburg serves as both a historical cautionary tale and a reminder of the inescapable influence of biology on human affairs. It underscores that power and ambition cannot define natural law and that the health of a lineage is inseparable from the political fortunes it seeks to maintain. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to uncover more forgotten tales of royalty, power, and history's strange twists, hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of history lovers. Don't miss the next chapter.